The night my parents announced Carly's graduation gift, the living room exploded. People clapped. Phones came out. Someone actually whistled. My mother beamed like she'd won an award herself, and my father lifted his glass as if he were closing a business deal. "A house," he said proudly. "Fully paid." Carly gasped, hand flying to her mouth, but the smile betrayed her. She already knew. She always knew. The house wasn't huge, but it was real keys, deed, photos already printed and passed around like proof of success. A fresh start handed over with applause. Then my father turned to me. "And for Lena," he said, pausing just long enough for effect, "a gym membership. Figured it might motivate you." Laughter broke out. Not polite. Not uncomfortable. Real laughter. I felt heat rush to my face as if the room had tilted toward me. Someone chuckled behind their napkin. My mother added, "It's practical," like that explained everything. I stared at the small envelope in my hands, suddenly aware of how tiny it looked compared to a house. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I smiled barely and sat there while the moment settled into my bones. Humiliation, I thought. That's the worst of it, I was wrong. From the outside, my family looked ideal. Big dinners. Framed photos. Loud stories told again and again. But inside our house, there was always an order. Carly stood at the top of it. She was confident, dramatic, endlessly protected. Mistakes disappeared around her. Problems were softened before they reached her. I was the opposite. The dependable one. The quiet one. If I struggled, the response was always the same. "You'll manage." And I did. I learned to live without asking. That night made it impossible to ignore the pattern. Carly's house cost around $120,000. Everyone knew. No one whispered it. They announced it proudly. When my turn came, my gift fit in one hand and came with a joke attached. Carly leaned toward me and whispered, "You could always upgrade yourself if you tried harder." I didn't trust my voice to respond. I stood up, put on my coat, and said, "I'm heading out." My mother frowned, embarrassed. My father didn't look up. Carly was already distracted by attention. Outside, the cold air hit me hard. I sat in my car gripping the steering wheel, replaying every laugh, every glance. Something settled in me, not anger yet, but clarity. I was done pretending this was normal. Within a week, I found a small apartment. Quiet. Clean. Mine. I moved without telling them where I was going. No speeches. No announcements. Just distance. And that's when the real consequences began. Because weeks later, a letter arrived with my name on it, and inside was proof my family hadn't just embarrassed me. They had crossed a line that could destroy my life. The first thing I noticed after moving was how quiet everything felt, and no voices bleeding through walls. No sudden opinions about my life choices. Just the soft hum of traffic outside and the steady rhythm of my own routine. I hadn't realized how loud my family had always been until the noise was gone. I unpacked slowly. One box a night. No rush. No audience. For the first few days, no one called. That alone told me more than any argument ever had. Then Carly broke first. She called like nothing had happened, her voice light and playful. "So, how's the new place? Cute and cozy." The pause before the last word carried judgment like perfume. I didn't answer. She followed up with a text an hour later, a photo of her living room. Hardwood floors. Big windows. A caption that read, "Still can't believe it's mine." I muted the thread, and why parents tried next. My mother left voicemails asking if I was done being dramatic. My father sent a short message. "Call when you cool off." Not "Are you okay?" Not "Did we hurt you?" Just irritation that I wasn't playing my role. A month passed. I settled into a routine I hadn't known I needed. Work during the day. Simple dinners at night. I bought a cheap plant from the corner store and placed it by the window. Watching it survive felt strangely grounding, like proof that growth didn't need approval. Then one night, my phone rang. Carly's name lit up the screen. I almost ignored it, but something in my chest tightened. I answered. She was crying. Not the dramatic kind she used when things didn't go her way. This was messy, breathless panic. Between gasps, she confessed what no one else had dared to say. She'd lost the house. Not slowly. Not over time. All at once. A weekend trip. A casino. A belief she could win back what she'd already lost. She didn't stop. She kept betting. And by the time reality hit, it was too late. "I messed up," she whispered. "Mom and Dad are freaking out." I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't comfort her either. The next morning, my parents called. Their voices were different now, soft, careful, urgent. They talked about family. about sticking together, about how this wasn't the time for old grudges. Then came the ask. Could I help with bills? Just temporarily. Just until things stabilized, I stared at my kitchen wall, the paint slightly chipped near the corner. A month ago, I was dramatic. Now I was needed. I didn't answer right away. 2 days later, Carly showed up at my apartment. I hadn't given her the address. She stood in the hallway looking smaller than I remembered, wrinkled clothes, red eyes, confidence replaced with desperation. I just need a place to crash, she said. Just for a night. I stepped aside and let her in, and that's when everything started to go wrong. Because what began as just one night turned into something far darker, and it forced me to see how far my family was willing to go. Carly said she would stay for one night, and I believed her because I wanted the problem to end quickly. One night turned into 2, then 3, without discussion. Her bag stayed by the door like a marker claiming space. She used my shower, ate my groceries, and spoke about the future as if my apartment were a waiting room, not a boundary she had crossed. She talked constantly. About bad luck. About pressure. About how our parents had pushed her too hard. Every story had a villain, and none of them were her. I listened without interrupting, because arguing would have changed nothing. By the 4th night, the weight of her presence felt heavier than the silence I had left behind. I told her she couldn't stay anymore. I kept my voice calm and my words simple. Her expression shifted instantly. Panic sharpened into anger. She asked if I expected her to sleep in her car. I told her she needed to figure something out. She left that night, slamming the door hard enough to shake the frame. The next morning, my mother called crying. She said Carly was suffering. She said I was being cruel. My father followed with a message reminding me of everything they had done for me growing up, as if support were a loan I had unknowingly signed for. I didn't respond. Then small things began to feel wrong. Food I hadn't eaten was gone. A blanket I never used was folded differently. I blamed stress at first. People misremember details all the time. But one night, I noticed the small window in my laundry nook wasn't fully locked. I never opened that window. A tight feeling settled in my chest. Before bed, I propped my phone on a shelf and started recording. 2:07 in the morning, the window slid open. Carly climbed in quietly, moving like someone who had practiced. She went straight to the kitchen, ate standing up, then curled up on the floor with one of my blankets and fell asleep. I watched the footage twice before confronting her the next day. She denied everything until I showed her the video. Then she broke down, crying and apologizing, saying she was ashamed and desperate and didn't want our parents to see how bad things had become. I gave her 1 hour to leave and told her not to come back. That was when the asking stopped and the accusations began. My parents told relatives I was heartless and cold, that I had abandoned my sister when she needed me most. Only my uncle pushed back. He told me quietly that I wasn't wrong, they just weren't used to consequences. I wanted to believe that was the end. I was wrong. The next betrayal was already on its way. I didn't know then that silence would become their weapon, paperwork their shield, and my name the final thing they felt entitled to use without permission to protect themselves from consequences coming. Because the next thing that arrived wasn't a phone call, it was a letter with my name on it, and a debt I never agreed to. The letter arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, plain and unremarkable. White envelope. My name printed neatly on the front, like it contained nothing more than a bill or advertisement. I opened it standing at the kitchen counter while my coffee cooled beside me, not expecting anything that could change my life to be why the second paragraph. My hands began to shake. IT claimed I owed money. Not a small amount, not a misunderstanding level balance, but a sum large enough to threaten my credit, my apartment, everything I had carefully built. The letter listed missed payments, late fees, and a warning that further action would follow if the balance wasn't addressed immediately. I read it again. Then a third time. I hadn't taken out any loans. I paid my bills early. I kept my life deliberately boring because stability felt safer than ambition. There had to be a mistake. Then I noticed the address listed on the account, my parents' house. A cold heaviness settled in my chest. I spent the rest of the day making calls, asking careful questions, writing notes I didn't want to believe I'd need. By evening, the picture was clear. Someone had used my personal information to open a loan. The money had gone toward covering Carly's fallout. Rent. Utilities. Debts they didn't want to name. They hadn't asked me. They hadn't warned me. They decided for me. I drove to my parents' house that night without calling ahead. The porch light was on. The place looked exactly the same, like nothing inside could be dangerous. My mother opened the door and froze when she saw me. "You should have called," she said quickly. I walked past her into the living room. My father sat on the couch. Carly stood near the window, arms crossed. I placed the letter on the table. "Explain." My mother picked it up, glanced at it, then looked away. She said they were going to tell me. My father sighed like I was exhausting him and said things had gotten out of hand. They needed time. You used my name, I said. My credit. My future. Carly scoffed and said I was overreacting. That it was temporary. I told her she didn't get to decide that. My mother stepped between us, saying Carly had been desperate. What were they supposed to do? Let her end up on the street? I laughed once, sharp and humorless. So you decided to put me there instead. My father snapped that it wasn't fair, that they raised me, that I owed them something. The room went quiet. No, I said. I don't. I explained what this could do to me, how it could follow me for years, how this wasn't family drama but a serious violation. My mother cried. Real tears. She said they didn't think I'd find out so fast. I told them exactly what would happen next. They would fix this immediately. They would close anything opened in my name. If I heard from a lender again, I would involve authorities. I wasn't threatening them. I was informing them. When I left, I knew something irreversible had shifted. And I knew this wasn't over yet. Because fixing the loan didn't fix the damage and my sister wasn't finished trying to take what she believed I owed her. For the next 2 days, my phone didn't stop vibrating. Calls, voicemails, messages stacked on top of each other, guilt wrapped in soft voices and disappointment disguised as concern. I didn't answer any of it. I needed distance, not explanations designed to make me doubt myself. On the 3rd day, I received confirmation. The loan had been paid. Closed. My name removed. No follow-up questions, no apologies attached. I didn't ask how they managed it. I didn't want details. All that mattered was that the threat hanging over my life was gone. Still, I didn't relax. I locked down my credit, changed passwords, added alerts to every account tied to my identity. I drew boundaries so sharp they couldn't be mistaken for suggestions. I slept lightly for a while, listening for sounds that weren't there, reminding myself I was safe. That evening, my uncle called. He spoke carefully, like someone delivering news that might bruise. He told me my parents were furious, but underneath the anger was fear. They knew they'd gone too far. They just weren't used to being told no. What about Carly? I asked. He hesitated. Then he said she was angry, but stuck. For the first time in her life, there was no one rushing in to clean up behind her. A week later, she showed up at my door. Unannounced. She stood in the hallway looking worn down, confidence replaced by exhaustion. Her voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. She said she just needed to talk. I didn't step aside. I didn't invite her in. Say it here, I told her. She said our parents wouldn't help her anymore. They'd told her she needed to figure it out on her own. She said she couldn't keep working 2 jobs, couldn't live like this, couldn't do everything without support. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You think you're better than me now? She snapped, frustration cracking through her fatigue. No, I said calmly. I think I learned faster. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. Then she laughed bitterly and said I'd changed, that I used to be easier. I told her she was right. Easier to use. Easier to ignore. Easier to blame. She left without another word. I closed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. Not from fear. From clarity. That was the moment I understood the power had shifted. Not because I had taken something from them, but because I had stopped giving. After that, things went quiet. No letters. No surprise visits. No sudden emergencies that somehow required my sacrifice. From my uncle, I heard Carly had moved into a tiny apartment and picked up extra shifts to survive. No house. No safety net. Just consequences and why parents complained, but they didn't rescue her. Not because they'd learned better, but because they had nothing left to leverage. And for the first time, neither did she. Walking away didn't destroy my family like they warned it did something far more dangerous. It finally set me free. After that night, everything finally slowed down and no more letters arrived with my name printed too neatly. No surprise visits. No emergencies disguised as family obligations. The chaos that had followed me for most of my life went quiet, and for the first time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I changed my routines. I updated every account, locked down my credit, and made sure no one could touch my life without my consent again. These weren't acts of paranoia. They were acts of respect for myself. From my uncle, I heard small updates. Carly moved into a cramped apartment on the edge of the city. She worked longer hours now. 2 jobs. No shortcuts. No one rushing in to soften the landing. My parents still complained about her situation, but something had shifted. They weren't fixing it anymore. Not because they'd grown wiser, but because they'd exhausted their options. They tried reaching out once. Just once. A careful message from my mother asking how I was doing. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a test to see if the door was still unlocked. I didn't reply. Silence felt healthier than reopening wounds that had never truly healed. Work. Things improved in small, steady ways. I earned a promotion. Nothing flashy. More responsibility, better pay, and the quiet satisfaction of being trusted. A few months later, I moved into a brighter apartment with larger windows and more space to breathe. I bought another plant for the sill and watched both of them grow toward the light. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for closure or an apology that would never come. I didn't need them to understand me. I understood myself now, and that was enough. Walking away hadn't ruined my family like they warned me it would. It hadn't made me heartless or selfish or cold. It had shown me something I should have learned much earlier. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's permission to be used. I stopped mistaking endurance for strength. I stopped believing that sacrifice was the same thing as loyalty. I learned that protecting myself didn't make me cruel. It made me honest. Some people only value you when you're useful to them. The moment you stop carrying their weight, they call it betrayal. But choosing yourself isn't betrayal. It's survival. I built a life that didn't require shrinking. A life where my worth wasn't measured by what I was willing to give up. A life that felt quiet, steady, and mine. And I never went back. If you've ever been made to feel small by the people who should have protected you, know this: you're allowed to leave. You're allowed to draw lines. You're allowed to choose peace over performance. Walking away doesn't mean you failed them. Sometimes, it means you finally chose yourself. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts and subscribe for more stories about boundaries, betrayal, and reclaiming your power.